everyone, this is Regular Michelle, and today for this Overrated Film Saturday, I thought it would be interesting to discuss the Pixar car movies. I'm probably going to be limited as to what I can talk about when it comes to Thanksgiving. So some videos I'll try to make Thanksgiving related or focus on things that are associated with Thanksgiving. However, there's only a certain amount of content that is available that explores this holiday in particular, so I think it'll be hard for me to sort of discuss it in depthly, but I will try to make videos that focus in more on it if I can, but sometimes I will be limited to just showcasing something that's either completely random or requested. So, without further ado, let me discuss in particular the Cars movies that pertain to Pixar, and I'm including both the first film as well as the second film. The reason I think Cars ultimately became an overexposed phenomenon, and as a result we got a really bad sequel out of it, is because there in the United States, in particular, there is a sort of culture that is cars. I think there's a lot of people out there who do enjoy cars or who collect cars, even those that can afford it. There is a huge demographic out there for cars in particular, especially for younger boys, since Hot Wheels are really popular and NASCAR is fairly well known and widespread. So I can see the sense in behind making a film that is centered for children around this concept, because there are those adults who like cars, and then there are children in particular who like cars. So if you put those things together, you probably get a very marketable product, and I think that's what the first Cars film sort of did. It knew who its audience was, and it went after that audience. Now, as far as the first film is concerned, again, I don't think it is of the highest quality when it comes to Pixar, but I'm not necessarily picky in that respect to where I feel that one studio should have a certain standard of filmmaking. I don't really hold it to. I don't necessarily. I don't necessarily mind if a studio doesn't make necessarily a big hit or one that is not as of greater value than previous products. And Cars is just one of those okay Pixar films, sort of similar to Brave. You know, it's okay. It's nothing special or grandiose, but at the same time, I think studios at times lose their creativity, especially when we see Cars ultimately birthing a sequel. But I think largely that has to do with the marketing aspect, and that a lot of people, I think, really held on to this idea of bringing cars to life because there's a lot of people who like cars, and like things that are associated with cars. And that's, I think, something that really drew people into liking cars. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of cars myself, but although I do enjoy cars for the way they look, I always find the designs to be really cool. And to actually go inside some like really nice cars is always always a treat. But beyond that, I don't know really the mechanics or the engineering behind car making, because that's something that I'm really not good at, and I wouldn't be really interested in, but I understand why there is this appeal, and why in particular a lot of people like that taste or that focus of a film. But again, the first one is just simplistic. It's not designed to be groundbreaking, and I don't think it was supposed to be groundbreaking. Like and again, I don't hold a studio to a certain standard. I don't think just because that they're Pixar, they're gonna make a good film. That's just not how it works. And I think sometimes um, critics oftentimes like to say, "Oh, this is Pixar. Oh, why did they let us down so much by making these Cars movies? And they're so overrated and so overblown. There's so much merchandise associated with it." And the thing is that I think sometimes artists, in particular critics or people that are focused within the arts sector of of uh, entertainment don't, and I guess you could say art in general, or you could say those that are more liberal arts leaning don't understand the logic behind a film like Cars. Um, and again, there is a very logical explanation as to why Pixar made this. It simply comes down to dollar value because there was a market for it, there was an appeal for it, and as a result of the film's success, it made merchandise. And yes, is it not that good as some other Pixar films? Absolutely. But they knew at Pixar that they didn't really necessarily need to try all that hard because they knew that it was something that people would go and see anyway and would be invested in anyway. So again, it's all I think what what artists and critics need to understand is that movie making is a business. You can't separate the demographics from reality. There's we like to think that we can change the way people see things, but people are going to like what they're going to like. You're not going to change their opinion. Um, and again, this is all dependent on cultural and you know uh, family backgrounds and things like that. You can't shake that off a person. And I think often what these critics like to do is they like to shake off um, what is maybe considered a little bit more mainstream, um, because it is a little bit more simplistic and is not as artistic, I guess you could say, or as of a creative artistic expression. And I understand that, and I understand that yes, some films that do come out, um, aren't as good as others, but that's how it works. That's how the market works. And I think I think people get mad at for something being like overrated, but again, that's how the market works. That's how these overrated products like Cars, like Frozen, that's how they're all created. They're all based upon within demographics, and these demographics will go and see these films. So in order to maybe um, really appeal to these demographics, they focus in and hone in on various things and try to make a film that revolves around that. And and again, I understand the appeal of Frozen in the same way that I understand the appeal of Cars. Um, but again, they're probably not as high of quality, and that's all right. I don't expect a studio to be good 100 or perfect 100% of the time. I don't hold it to that standard, and um, I think it's again, I look more at films as um, whether or not whether or not they're just trying to say something, um, and in doing so, you know, ultimately don't try to insult the audience. I think that's really the biggest thing for me. And with the first film, again, it is sort of a marketing gimmick, but at the same time, the story isn't all that bad. The characters are not all that the story is not all that outlandish, and the characters are okay, but they're not as great as something like maybe Finding Nemo or Toy Story. And that's okay, because we don't need a bazillion Toy Stories. We don't need a bazillion, perfect films. Just this whole idea that, we need to make films somehow perfect is, I think, and appeal to every single possible person out there, I think is largely impossible to do. Uh, and Again, I understand that certain aspects in particular of the Cars films are very formulaic and don't, again, hold that same standard, but that's okay. Because they don't need to have these films don't need to have the same standard as some other films do, because that's what they're going for. And that's what studios do, because it's a way to make money. Um, and that's what entertainment is. It's a business. It's designed to see what can ultimately produce um, a product that is of, again, of quality to appeal to its demographic. And that's what Cars successfully did. And I think Toy Story sort of successfully did it too, because they marketed it to kids relatively at a younger age, and then those kids sort of grew up with Toy Story, and then it sort of ends within, their adulthood. And again, it's really they Pixar, I think, knew its market. But you're obviously seeing that backfire on them, especially when you see that they made a sequel to Cars, and then on top of that, they put in the snowball of Planes films. And I think really Cars was the first overrated of Pixar films. It really set the stage of Pixar not being taken as seriously as they were. And that's, I think, ultimately, you see the consequences of not keeping your game up. And that's just how the market works. And you obviously see that there's other studios, coming back and making more money. Disney, for example, again with Frozen, even though I think that film's fairly overrated. But at the same time, I think you're seeing the impacts of creating an overrated product and what it ultimately leads a studio to do. And I think that's what we see as a result. We see Pixar drifting in quality when it comes to filmmaking. But I think largely the Cars film sort of contributed to that. And again, I'm not saying that the first film is all that horrible. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with the first film. I don't find the whole concept completely nonsensical and outlandish, because I think it was really trying to play with the concept of a child's mind. But again, I would understand why some people wouldn't appeal to it, in the same way I understand why some wouldn't like Treasure Planet, because of how nonsensical the whole uh, environment it tries to create. I can totally get behind people's tastes being taken in or out of the film. And I think this is largely what this film is trying to do. It's trying to appeal to certain people's tastes. And sometimes that just doesn't work. And this film didn't really make me angry. I mean, it didn't, or these films in particular didn't really, I would say the second one though, because did make me a little bit more angry, because I knew that, Pixar was pretty much selling out at that point. And I was like, this is just insane. Like, no way. But I think ultimately, despite, Cars, I think still being an okay film, it really was a snowball, and as a result, we get a lot of overrated things that were to come after that. Um, and I think that's really ultimately my reasoning as to behind why I think Cars became overrated was because it was appealing to people's tastes. And I don't think there's anything initially wrong with that, but I think it ultimately led to a snowball. And I think that's ultimately where we see Pixar today, because now they're really struggling to try to compete because a lot of other studios are either reviving themselves like Disney, or they're basically sticking to their traditional roots like DreamWorks. So um, we'll see what ultimately ends up happening. Um, I really don't know. I almost feel like animation is kind of it's anyone's game now, and I'm not going to, be rooting for one team, but what I am going to be rooting for is, the final product, and that's really what I think of in the end of the day. I don't really have necessarily a brand loyalty, although again, I think Pixar and Disney are probably the ones that have maintained, I think, the most highest quality of animated films. I'm not saying that they can't slip up sometimes um, and again produce overrated products. And I think Cars is a perfect example. And it's a bummer though, because I heard too with Disney. The makers of Frozen are gonna make another film, and when I saw the previews, I was just like, okay, first off, this trailer gives you nothing as to what the story's about. It looks completely generic, and oh my, I just hope that I think it's called Big Hero 6 or something like that. But who knows what ultimately will result from that film. But at the end of the day, I think it just really all depends on ultimately what audiences want, and it's really a lot of it is based on demographics. Like I think the nostalgia critic in particular tries to undermine this fact. He tries to say, oh, we should try to focus on being, you know, um, good all the time instead of popular. And see, that's the thing is sometimes there's just fads, and sometimes there's just cultures and demographics that like certain things that appeal to them, and you can't just take that away just because you think that it's not art. And I think that's what ends up happening with a lot of critics is they don't narrow it down to just the fact that, yeah, it's my opinion with backed up evidence. They just like to say, oh yeah, I know better, and therefore, I know what's best for everybody. And that's just not, um, to me, that's just not criticism. That's just, stating your own opinion. And I think, but again, I think there are some arguments again that are more um, that have a lot more evidence than others. But at the same time, I'm not going to act like um, that there isn't a reasoning behind to why certain things are popular. And I understand why Cars was popular. In the same way I understand why Frozen was popular. It's that whole appealing to people of different backgrounds and so on and so forth. So that's what it's trying to be. It's just trying to be a product for the masses, and you can't really change the masses because the masses are always going to be there. So the best thing I would say and to take away is that despite something being overrated, which I think the Cars films are, they're not really meant to be anything, I think, as special. And at the same time, I think that this can leave a negative impact on not just um, the quality of films, but also on the studio itself and its ability to be recognized. So again, that's really all what it boils down to. They just need to understand that this is a business, and the business is going to do whatever it takes to get people in the seats, and that's the idea behind it. So yeah, I think that's really though ultimately all I can really say when it comes to the Cars movies. Again, it's the first one I thought was still at least nice. I mean, it was simple. That's the best way I can put it. The first film was simple. It had a simple story, simple characters. It was just simplistic, and it was nothing more than that. But I think it was ultimately used as a tool for Pixar to ultimately make the second film and make so much money from that and through the merchandising and all that stuff and from the concept itself, that ultimately we did get an overrated product, and as a result, or products you could say, and that resulted in more lower quality products coming out further down the road. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. It's so great to have my channel back and being able to do videos. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year. And goodbye.